Hello, everybody. I am Dr. Brett Talley Daniel, MD, a neurologist and headache doctor. And today I'm talking about food-triggered migraine. Migraine is a complicated neuronal chemical process that occurs in persons who have a migraine genetic familial link. The whole event is still not completely understood, and whether foods trigger allergic or vasoactive effects in the brain is uncertain. What is known is that the migraine process releases three inflammatory neurochemicals that affect the thalamus, which is the brain pain center, cerebral arteries, and the trigeminal nerve. Migraine affects 12% of the world population, 25% of women, and 6% of men have migraine. The condition consists of recurrent, moderate to severe headache, which is usually one-sided, throbbing, and associated with nausea and vomiting, and sensitivity to light and sound. Treatment for this still uncertain medical situation is trial and error, identification of the food that triggers migraine for that person, and then avoiding consuming that food trigger. Food-triggered migraine. The treatment of food-triggered migraine is clinically identifying the specific food for that person and avoidance of eating it. A migraine may be set off by a trigger, with some persons reporting the trigger influence as being a mild problem, and others reporting the trigger to be strongly related to the occurrence of a migraine headache. Migraine triggers cause headache to start up within 24 hours after the trigger. Common migraine triggers are stress, freedom from stress, estrogen withdrawal for women in the third week of their menstrual cycle, missing meals, insomnia, and barometric pressure change. Related questions. What is the incidence of food-triggered migraine? This is a controversial area. What's reported is between 12 and 60% of persons report foods as triggers. These percentage numbers are far apart, which reflects the conflicts in the study of food triggers. However, a lot of data is based upon self-reporting, and the data is not firm or conclusive enough to prove or disprove any specific trigger. What's the explanation of how foods trigger migraine? Some writers of migraine think that a clear explanation for why foods triggers migraine is lacking. Researchers have offered vasoactive, which means vasodilatation of the cerebral arteries, and allergic mechanism to explain the relationship between certain food ingestion and the occurrence of migraine headache. A vasoactive reaction produced by a food product would cause vasodilatation of cerebral arteries. An allergic mechanism would consist of a food item acting as a foreign protein like an antigen, which activates the immune system in the human body with histamine released by mast cells. An article regarding the hypothesis of mast cell involvement with migraine. Dr. Levy, Dr. Burstein, and Strassman wrote in Headache on mast cell involvement in the pathophysiology of migraine headache, a hypothesis, in June of 2006, and this was an abstract review. Migraine attacks are triggered, they said, by a variety of conditions, including endogenous and exogenous factors. Evidence suggests that activation and sensitization of primary afferent meningeal nociceptive neurons, the peripheral arm of the trigeminal vascular system, constitutes one of the earliest events promoting the intracranial pain of migraine. However, the link between the varied triggering factors and activating meningeal nociceptive neurons is not completely understood. So this paper reviews data relevant to the hypothesis that mast cells, upon activation by migraine triggers, contribute to the genesis of migraine headaches. And they stated at the end, further studies are needed to test directly the nature of mast cell involvement in the pathogenesis of migraine headache. What about allergic headaches? Allergy headaches are clearly a myth, but hard to ignore or put down because so many TV ads and internet articles talk about it. However, the word allergy is not in the International Classification of Headache Disorders, Volume 3, which is like the Bible for migraine. Allergic rhinitis is the proper name for the term sinus allergies or hay fever. The diagnosis of allergic rhinitis is based on a history of seasonal or continuous symptoms of nasal and ocular itching, sneezing, nasal stuffiness, nasal drainage, and cough. It's usually familial. The diagnosis can be confirmed by demonstration of IgE antibodies by either skin testing or radioallergen sorbent testing. Skin testing is preferred because of the greater sensitivity and decreased cost. Migraine and allergic rhinitis are comorbid. Comorbid means that two separate medical problems come together more commonly than by chance. Many persons who have migraine may also have allergic rhinitis. I have an article relating the confluence of migraine and allergy written by Bectus et al. In Acta Neurologica Belgica 2017 on allergens might trigger migraine attacks. These authors stated the mechanisms underlying the onset of migraine attacks are not completely understood. Environmental changes and a number of other factors could induce migraine attacks. And they looked at this rating here, and they felt like the migraine patients who had frequent attacks should be examined for allergies because they found a statistical increase of both migraine and allergies in this population. All right, what is the list of possible food triggers? This list is everywhere. The American Migraine Association, the National Headache Foundation, they have a similar drug list, food list. And I'm not going to read all of them, but I'll do some of this. Aged cheese, that's a biggie. Bananas, figs, raisins, beer, wine, especially red wine, champagnes, vermouth, hard liquor, dairy products such as ice cream, milk, yogurt, whipped cream, and sour cream, fermented and pickled foods such as pickled herring, most citrus fruits like oranges, grapefruit, and lemons, nuts, peanuts, peanut butter, yeast-containing products such as fresh breads, sourdough, and donuts, avocados, anchovies, onions, pork, pizza, chicken liver, chocolate, caffeine in coffee, tea, and colas, and over-the-counter medications such as Excedrin and BC powder, MSG, which is monosodium glutamate, which is found in Chinese food, accent seasoning, Lowry's seasoned salt, canned soups, snack chips, and some processed meats and nuns, and TV dinners, saccharin diet sodas, drinks, and foods, sulfites found in shrimp and processed potatoes, store-bought potato mix, benzoic acid, which is a food preservative, nitrites used as a preservative in bologna, salami, pepperoni, and hot dogs. A bunch of articles written on a thing called the hot dog headache, aspartame, a tabletop sweetener used in foods and drinks as called NutraSweet. In spite of the list and the inclusion of many of the food substances listed above in numerous articles on migraine, some researchers deny a migraine trigger for tyramine, which is naturally present in chocolate, alcoholic beverages, most cheeses, and processed meats. Also, while MSG is frequently reported to be a provocative migraine factor, some think the evidence does not consistently support that it is a dietary trigger. How to keep up with all the food one sees for migraine headaches? Well, the answer there is use a cell phone app for creating a migraine diary. List suspicious foods and chemicals in the diary and see if they appear to consistently cause migraine headaches. Create a good nutritional history. Go to my blog, go to www.drmigraine.com and look at the various free migraine cell phone apps. That's under general migraine. Migraine patients may have one or two foods they think aggravate their headaches. Migraineurs are then called to analyze the foods they've eaten before migraine occurs and see if they can see a consistent relationship. When they've done this, they should avoid that food. Article on migraine and diet. Gordon Milchap wrote in Review of Pediatric Neurology 2017 on the diet factor in pediatric and adolescent migraine. The first statement there was, diet can play an important role in the precipitation of headaches in children and adolescents with migraine. The diet factor in pediatric migraine is frequently neglected in favor of preventive drug therapy. The list of foods, beverages, and additives that trigger migraine include cheese, chocolate, and they give a long list of that. They thought that treatment should begin with a headache and diet diary and the selective avoidance of foods presumed to trigger attacks. They stated that a universal migraine diet with simultaneous elimination of all potential food triggers is generally not advised in practice, and a well-balanced diet is encouraged with avoidance of fasting or skipped meals. Long-term prophylactic drug therapy is appropriate only after exclusion of headache-precipitating trigger factors, including dietary factors. Pinchoni et al., writing in Neurological Sciences on the subject of food as a trigger and aggravating factor of migraine, stated that a relevant proportion of patients say that their migraine attacks may be precipitated by dietary items, and the percentage of patients reporting foods as trigger ranges in different studies. Fasting, alcohol, chocolate, and cheese are the dietary precipitating factors most frequently reported. The finding that diet-sensitive migraineurs are usually sensitive to several different foods leads to the hypothesis of antigenic similarities between these disparate foods or common clinical constituents, but a clear scientific explanation of the mechanisms indicated in the development of migraine attacks, supposedly precipitated by food, is still lacking. In conclusion, they said identification of environmental factors, including dietary factors that consistently trigger migraine in some subjects, may be helpful to reduce attacks frequency. But the biological mechanism by means of triggers in general and food in particular precipitate migraine attacks remains obscure. So, I'm back stating this myself. Everybody is different, and food triggers and migraine is a complicated subject. Watch out. The foods that bother you, the foods that right away you know always gives you a migraine headache, and then avoid those foods. Please click on subscribe down there so we can follow each other. Thanks for listening to this. God bless all you persons with migraine, and I'll see you on the next talk.